The Genius Club with Prairie Pine. Chapter 14. Breaking the Deadlock. The dinner party wrapped up around 9 o'clock. Alex headed home, took off his suit, and got cleaned up. He sat down at his bedroom desk, replaying the events of the dinner party in his mind. Today's dinner had truly been an eye-opener. Clearly, everyone lived in the same East Sea city, standing on the very same soil, yet leading entirely different lives. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars as casually as if they were splurging on happy beans, living a fairy tale existence as if every one of them was a prince or a princess. This was plainly the real world, yet it felt more surreal than a dream. Speaking of dreams, Alex propped his forehead in his hand, his gaze sweeping over the 2 sheets of white paper on the desk. These were notes he'd jotted down a few days earlier, while analyzing the incident with Big Face Cat and CC in his dream. One was a story timeline laying out the cause and effect of the feud between the two, and the other was a list of unsolved mysteries, noting 3 lingering doubts in his mind. He picked up the paper with the unsolved mysteries and looked at the 3 questions written on it. What exactly is hidden in the safe? What is the safe's password? And why did CC save him? Her attitude towards him was also very subtle and strange. The first question left him with no clues whatsoever. Even though this was his own dream, he had no idea what he possessed that was so confidential it needed to be hidden in such a secure bank safe. But judging by Cece's reaction, the contents inside were extremely important to her, important enough to risk everything for a bank heist. What on earth could it be? He muttered to himself. Since this was his own dream, he thought the contents of the safe must be something within his cognition, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. He really didn't understand what embarrassing secret he had that needed to be concealed in such a deep safe. The second question was equally puzzling. What exactly was the safe's password? A password was either correct or incorrect with no middle ground, and Alex had tried every 8-digit password he could think of, yet none of them worked. This left him utterly confused, and now he was even more curious than CC about what the password could be. In his last dream, he had racked his brain, trying every combination of dates he could recall, birthdays, anniversaries, meaningful dates, and even numerous dates related to the dream itself. Numbers like 26,240,828 and 26,240,829, along with the time 42 in both forward and reverse orders, had all been tested. He was truly at his wit's end. Alex couldn't comprehend it. Since the safe had appeared in his dream, it must be his own safe without a doubt. Yet he couldn't open it, which was simply inconceivable. However, among the 3 questions, the one he cared about most was the third. He lowered his head, staring at the paper where the 3rd question was written. Why did CC save me? Her attitude towards me is also very subtle and strange. This was the only question with clues and a discoverable answer, because CC herself definitely knew the reason. She just refused to tell him. CC, he whispered. Now that he thought carefully about her voice when she spoke, he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He must have heard it somewhere in reality, and it wasn't too long ago, probably within the past few months. The more he thought about it, the more familiar it felt, as if he had definitely heard that pleasant, lively, and distinctive voice before. But he couldn't for the life of him remember when or where he had heard it. An illusion, he wondered. Actually, there are quite a few people with similar voices. On TikTok many girls have voices exactly like Lazy Goat. He shook his head, pushing these muddled thoughts aside, and went back to pondering the previous question. So, why did CC save me? Alex propped his forehead in his hand, unable to make sense of it. Clearly, to CC, both he and Big Face Cat were criminals of the same ilk, so there was no reason to kill only Big Face Cat and spare him. What's more, he was the mastermind behind the bank bombing, so he was by no means innocent. He picked up a red pen and circled the third question twice. He had to ask ACC herself to get the answer. But now, here's the problem, Alex muttered, frowning slightly. CC knew the answer, but she wouldn't tell him unless he helped her open the safe. Yet he didn't know the password, creating an unsolvable deadlock. Unless, break the deadlock. His eyes turned resolute. He knew full well that using normal means, he would never get the answer from CC, so he had to resort to unconventional means. CC seemed like an extremely intelligent woman, far harder to deceive than Big Face Cat. What's more, she was skilled in combat and had a gun, so Alex feared he couldn't subdue her in a head-on confrontation. He closed his eyes and thought deeply, and soon he came up with a plan to break the deadlock. His plan was straightforward. First, meet up with Big Face Cat, gain his trust, and then tell him he had been deceived. Next, form an alliance with Big Face Cat and set up an ambush for CC in advance at the bank warehouse. Finally, wait for CC to appear, subdue her with a scheme, and force the answer out of her. I can't do it alone, but if I enlist Big Face Cat's help, 2 against 1 should be no problem, he thought. The pen in Alex's hand spun rapidly between his fingers as he confirmed the plan. This strategy to break the deadlock should work. He had no real desire to harm CC. He just wanted to know the answer. Once he got it, he wouldn't make things difficult for her, and they could each go their separate ways. He glanced at the clock by his bedside. 21:45 turn. Every time he had met Big Face Cat before, it had been around 10 o'clock. So if he fell asleep quickly, there would still be time. Alex quickly turned off the light, climbed into bed, and closed his eyes. Moments later, a familiar sweltering summer wind blew against his face, making his skin feel a little dry. He opened his eyes and saw the scene he had witnessed thousands of times before. The electronic notice board displayed the time, 21:54 Torier. I need to get the Ultraman mask quickly, he said to himself. Looking to the right front, he spotted the 2 little boys still fighting, shouting, Ultraman kick and Ultraman elbow, as they always did. These 2 kids were actually old friends of Alex. When he was little and had this dream, he would often play with them and engage in light battles. Back then, he was a head shorter than the boys and was often bullied by them. They seemed like 2 invincible mountains of flesh in his eyes. Later, as he grew taller, the boys remained the same, and Alex became their big brother. As time passed, Alex no longer played such childish Ultraman battles, but the 2 boys remained there, fighting tirelessly day after day, year after year, for thousands of days and nights, so long that the road had even been worn down. He had grown up, but they would never age. Time was forever frozen on this day. Ultraman kick, Ultraman elbow. The boys threw down their masks and fought farther and farther away. Alex stepped forward, picked up the Ultraman mask from the ground, and muttered with a hint of amusement, Key item, get.